Now then, people, welcome back to the Just Joe football show, and it's time for a video that I'm quite nervous about actually doing, but one that I'm really excited about doing with these lovely lads that you can see on the screen with me now. It's the Leeds United top 10 players of all time, as voted for by us, by a number of content creators, and more importantly, you. Okay, so do remember this fact as we go through the top 10, just so the audience are aware, right, folks? What I asked is, like I say, I asked a host of content creators. I had loads of responses. I asked the members of this show. I asked on videos, so I had it all in the comments. So this isn't our top 10, if you like. Basically, what I've done is used a point scoring system. My head's been burnt out, if I'm honest, but if you were voted in first position, you got 10 points, all the way down to 10th, where you got 1 point. What I did is put them into a spreadsheet, totaled it all up, and this is the top 10 list that we've come up with. But before we get into 10th position, what I'm going to do is just reel off some names of the Nearly men that just missed out. The Nearly men are, okay, Nigel Martin, Johnny Giles, Rafinha, Norman Hunter, Mark Viduka, and Gary Speed, okay? They didn't make the list.
I just froze. I just froze, sorry.
Completely froze. That's complete. What?
I'm shocked. Honestly,
You're shocked?
Yeah. Just hearing Johnny Giles and Norman Hunter out of the top 10, the overall top 10 is mental to me, because Norman Hunter is a world champion too. Johnny Giles has been monumental. Both of them have been monumental during the 70s in that heavy team. Nigel Martin has been monumental for us too in the 90s and the 20s and the new millennium, but for me, it's not in the top 10. But Giles and Hunter are two of the best to ever play for Leeds United.
So, Rocco, for you, no Giles, no Hunter. I guess with the others, Martin, Rafinha, Viduka, Speed, you can sort of understand it. But the two big ones, is it Johnny Giles, Norman Hunter for you that haven't made the list?
Yeah.
Quite surprised.
Yeah, they're the two that are in my list that haven't made it. The others I didn't have either. But yeah, Johnny Giles, he was in my top 5. When you look at what the other players that he played with say about him, they all talk about him like he was the most talented player at the club, basically. And without him, probably they wouldn't have been able to reach the heights that they did. But he is ex-Man U, so maybe that's why I didn't get in.
Right, okay. In 10th position, lads, is John Charles, okay? 327 appearances, 157 goals, and still remains the only Leeds United player to score 40-plus goals in a league season, having hit 42 in 39 games in season 53-54. Andrea, I'm going to come to you first because you've got a book there to hand as well, haven't you, on John Charles. Deservedly for me makes the list. I'd have been heartbroken. For me, he's my number one, as you folks know, which I know won't go down well, but for me, John Charles, I think a lot of it, again, you know what I'm like, vibes, man. I remember when I spoke about this the other day on Leeds Lately, did a project on ICT, and I really delved into Leeds United's history, and John Charles, having never got a yellow card, etc., just was a player that for me, really spoke to me. Can play centre-back and up front as well, and arguably one of the best Welsh players, if not British players of all time. Talk to me, Andrea.
Yeah, I pray that you've answered this one that Rocco recommended to me. I'm still reading it. I haven't finished it yet, but it's by Robert Endicott. And honestly, reading this story because, of course, John Charles, one of the stands at the ground as its name, bears his name, the West Stand. So it shows you the contribution that he had at the club. If you really know his story, it was called in Italy, the Gentle Giant, Il Gigante Buono. Back then, John Charles was one of the top players in the world, and he used to play for Leeds United. I think he was the first global, and still is probably the biggest world star at the time to play for Leeds United, because everybody who followed football at the time knew who John Charles was.
He was the first ever Leeds United legend, really. And that's a big part of it as well. The first real icon of the football club. Yeah. As Andrea has alluded to there, that is a massive thing, and will always get you high in something like this. So yeah, you cannot deny John Charles. No. He very much set the foundations for the the 60s then to be a big success. And then you have to look at his career after that as well. Goal scoring record phenomenal. Probably Wales' best ever player. I think along with your Gareth Bales and that lot, he has to be up there. And I think most Welsh fans would say, probably Gareth Bale and John Charles, easy top two.
No, my grandfather played against him in Italy, and in Serie A, when he moved to Juve, he was mobbed everywhere. He was basically mobbed. The fans loved him. They loved the way he was, like a person, basically, not as a footballer, like a person, And he played with Boniperti and Sivori. That was a legendary trio for Juve. He played in a World Cup for Wales at the time. Wales was not the team it is right now. He was one of the top stars, and still remember in Juve as one of their biggest legends for Juve too. So a club like Juve sharing a legend with Leeds United, it shows you the level John Charles was as a player and as a person too. Il gigante buono, the gentle giant.
It's a bit of a travesty that he is just 10th, isn't it, Rocco? But having you recommended a book to Andrea shows that you're also a big fan of John Charles as well.
Yeah. I had him third in my list. Pretty much, because like Oscar said, most of his career at Leeds was in the second division. But for this one, I sort of took into account what he did at Juve. The reason being, he'd spent, 5 or 6 years banging in the goals at Leeds. When he played up front, he was scoring nearly a goal a game. But then they'd, sometimes put him into defence and he'd plug that gap. It was just a shame they didn't have two of him. But, his goal scoring was unbelievable. They finally got promoted. And in his one and only season in the top flight, I think he scored late 30s anyway, a boatload of goals in the first division. And, he was thought of as the best player in the world. The best player in the world played for Leeds United, and nothing team that had been in the second division for years. And when he went to Juve, he proved it. And, that's sort of where I'm coming from. The next 5 years, Juve had done really badly the previous season. And then he went there, top scorer, won the Scudetto. And he was there, I think, 5 years and maybe won 4 Scudettos. I'm not sure, but, they were a top team straight away with John Charles in the team. And also because he's, Leeds through and through, it was hard for him to leave. And he always said he'd come back, and he did come back. And he wasn't the same player when he came back, and he didn't last long in Revy's team. But clearly an absolute legend of the club. So, he definitely deserves to be in the list.
Moving on to 9th position now, lads, and it is Jack Charlton. Okay, Jack Charlton is in 9th. 773 appearances, which is absolutely insane. 96 goals. Here's a little bit of a mad fact for you. His trial game for Leeds United actually clashed with his police interview, and Charlton chose to play the game instead. And look, the rest is history. 773 appearances. That sort of stuff isn't done in today's game. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, World Cup winner as well. And went on to manage Ireland as well, and he's just well thought of within the game. He has to be in the list as well. I think for me, I had him right up there. I think a few of you did as well. I think Jack Charlton just epitomises Leeds for me. And he's not from Leeds. He's actually from the Blythe area, I think, in the northeast. But
that's Northumberland, yeah.
Yeah, just his whole stature, when they were smoking and all that sort of stuff. He just epitomises that era for me. But Rocco, we'll start with you. Jack Charlton in 9th. Maybe a game we probably should be higher, but he's made the list. That's the main thing.
Yeah, exactly. I could excuse anything as long as they're in the top 10. And I mean, I had Jack second, actually. He wasn't probably the most talented. He wasn't the second most talented player we've had, but for his importance and, an absolute rock in defence. And the thing was, when he wasn't in the team for Evie, seasons fell apart if he wasn't there. We needed him. We really missed his aerial presence. 96 goals he scored as well for a centre-back, unbelievable. And so he was a massive weapon on the near post at corners. It was a great tactic that worked time and again. He'll have had loads of assists as well from flick-ons that didn't get counted. Won everything, world champion. I mean, what can you say? He's broken so many records. He deserves to be right up there. And yeah, like you say as well, just an absolute legend of a man. Like, I hate, like, it's a cliche, they don't make him like Blah anymore.
No,
but they really don't make him like Jack anymore, do they? He's just a legend. I love him. So yeah, good that he's in there.
Oscar, top player, right up there. I know you had him in your list as well. Great.
Yeah, I actually had him Big Jack 9th, and easy can make a case for Big Jack being higher. I mean, the fact is, there's 38 games in the Premier League season. Times that by 20 years, you'd still be 16 short of Jack Charlton's total appearances for Leeds United. That is the longevity we're talking about. That's not allowing for injuries. That's not allowing for getting rested. As he gets older into his career, he didn't. Jack Charlton, right until when he retired, was a regular. And you just have to look at his record. Rocco's touched on it. The fact he's a world champion, the fact he's won league titles, the fact he's played. The longevity and just the sheer level of titles he's won. He's come back from adversity. It was difficult for Charlton as well. The fact of who his brother was. How many players you've seen over the years where they've got a superstar brother. They've not been able to replicate that same level. Jack Charlton is the total opposite. Jack Charlton accepted he wasn't the most technically gifted footballer. You only have to look at the players he played alongside. Bobby Moore at the World Cup. Probably one of the most gifted ball-playing centre-backs you'll ever see. And Norman Hunter as well, by the way. Norman Hunter was he was a hard man. Let's not make any mistake about it. But he was a good ball-playing centre-back as well. Jack Charlton, his style allowed those two to express themselves. It was as simple as that, really. And you can't deny the records and the sheer amount of goals as well as already been mentioned.
Yeah, and I think the mad thing is, Andrea, actually, when you actually think about it as well. These players, and like Oscar said, that stat of still being like 16 games short after playing so many seasons. Let's remember as well, Andrea, that none of the sports science was where it was. They were drinking and smoking probably pre-match, post-match, half-time. They played so many games of football. The footballs were like pig's bladders. The pitches were terrible. So when you actually think how many games he played in the conditions that he did, it just makes it even more insane for me, Andrea.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, it shows you they were called the Leeds for a reason, back at the time, for the style of football, for the passion on the pitch. Sometimes it was over the line probably, but that was how there was, how they played. And that is the identity of Leeds United. We always look up to that team as a comparison of how the team should play on the pitch, in terms of showing the commitment and the passion for the badge,
Right, folks, in 8th position, and a player that didn't make any of our list, it's one Tony Yeboah in 8th position. Just 66 appearances, so clearly had a big impact on a lot of Leeds United fans. 32 goals. Are we surprised to see Tony in? Do you think, for me, I think it's the goals. I think it's the two big goals in that era that maybe gets in the minds of people, and it's like, and to be honest, outside of Leeds United, I get it all the time. I don't know, you probably do as well, like, them goals. Do you remember them goals? And I think outside of Leeds United, a lot of people just associate the two. But yeah, in 8th position. Yeah, talk to us.
He's not just like for Leeds fans, he's like a genuine, very early sort of mid-90s Premier League icon, and I still can't work out that Wimbledon goal. How he does what he does, the way he bounces the ball between both feet, and then both are just absolutely phenomenal. The fact that they happened within a week of each other as well, and he was one of those players where you talk about great goal scorers. He was a great goal scorer, and he was a scorer of great goals. He didn't just score tap-ins, Tony Yeboah. It was just every goal he scored was an absolute banger. And the fact is, I think why he probably gets so highly rated in terms of this is the fact that he played in a very defensive team, under George Graham. In terms of, it wasn't a team that was creating tons and tons of chances. Say if he played for Leeds sort of 5 years later in the David O'Leary side, he scores 25, 30 goals a season in that team. With more creative players around him, a more attack-minded team. At any kind of era, it was more attacking than George Graham. I think he does get even more. It wasn't a great Leeds team he played in, and he elevated its level a fair bit. And I think obviously don't know what the rest of the 7 is, but I'd imagine there'd be a few other players in there because they elevated the team they played in. They got it to places that it probably didn't really have any right to get to. And that was certainly what Tony Yeboah did. It was just a shame. He only had him for 2 seasons, but again, I said about longevity being important. When you talk about peak, Tony Yeboah's got to be up there at the peak of Leeds United strikers, well up there in terms of his 2 seasons. If you can find a Leeds striker who's produced 2 better seasons, I think it'd be very, very hard push, to be honest.
I guess it shows how big of an impact it is. Like Oscar said, just 66 appearances and to be considered one of the top 10 Leeds players of all time. Again, he wasn't on any of our lists, but it's clear, he's well thought of within the Leeds United fan base.
Yeah, to be honest, I can make a case for him being in the list, purely because he's the best striker I've ever seen in my life. And if I see a better Leeds striker, I'll be absolutely thrilled. The problem obviously is longevity. It was basically a year, but spread over 2. So he came in the January, and by the following January or February, he started getting injuries, and he wasn't the same. But his goal scoring record, the goals that he scored, I mean, he had everything. He was brilliant in the air, 2-footed, as we know, so strong, so fast, amazing touch, so clinical. Ice cool in front of goal. Just didn't miss. All sorts of finishes, dinked. He was like the best of everything. So it was only a year, but what an unbelievable striker he was. At his best, he would have got into any Leeds team. I'm absolutely sure of that.
Right, in 7th position now, folks, is one Peter Lorimer. 707 appearances, 238 goals. And his last appearance in a Leeds United shirt was away at Barnsley on October the 27th, 1985, which was actually Billy Bremner's first game in charge. So that's quite a nice way to end, I guess. But Peter Lorimer, 7th position. Surprised not to see him higher, lads. What are your thoughts on Lorimer being in there?
It was 7 in my list, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I think, if you see some highlights, of course, we were not born back then, so you have to watch the highlights. You see that his shot was a force. He was called Slasher Lorimer because of his powerful shot. Was a modern player. He was already in the 70s and also played in the 80s, so he was a modern player. If you see the way he moved, the way he had the instinct for goal, he had everything, He was one of the most consistent players on the pitch, and he could play in various positions, So for me, 7, it's a good number, honestly.
Yeah, I had him 7, so everyone's got it spot on. Well done. He was an amazing player, actually. So I've watched a lot of highlights of full match replays of finals and stuff like that, and I think when he first came into the team, he was sort of there. He had his shot, and I don't think he had that much else. But then as he got older, obviously came in when he was really young. He made his debut at 15 years old, 1963. So 22 plus years between his debut and his last appearance. But as he got older and matured, he completely, reached his potential. He was one of the top young players in Britain. And he reached that level. He was awesome. It wasn't just his shot. He had the skill. He could put a corner on Jack Charlton's head nearly as well as Eddie Gray could. To have them 2 down each wing, and that's the thing as well. He scored over 200 goals, mostly from the right wing. He was a brilliant player, so definitely deserves to be there. Plus his longevity. Plus he scored the goal that should have won us the European Cup. He's sort of done everything. He used to go in goal. He was even decent in goal, actually. Made some good saves. You'd be surprised. He's done everything for Leeds United. And I'm glad that he's made the list as well.
Oscar, 238 goals. I just had a quick look there as Rocco was speaking. It's the most goals scored on this list, to be honest. So that shows just, how good he was. And
he's not a striker. Well, he's not a natural. He wasn't an out-and-out striker. He played more on the wing. I know from time to time.
Inside forward, he's like Leeds United Salah. Leeds United Salah.
If you look at the numbers, just the sheer numbers, I actually had Peter Lorimer very high. I did third. Just purely for the pure numbers and performances as well. I mean, his ball striking, his whole technique was phenomenal. Yes, Eddie Gray, the imagine he's going to be higher in this list. Was a flashier, more skillful player. But I think if you look in terms of pure productivity, you can only compare it to the players he was up against at the time. The other inside forwards around. No one was getting close to Peter Lorimer's numbers. No one, not in the Leeds team, not in the rest of the league. And it's the consistency, the season on, season in, season out. He performed, and big goals, big moments, and plenty of assists and creativity as well on top of that. And to do that for such a long time, and it's a different era as well. 4-4-2, you're playing a little bit deeper. You have to protect your fullback a little bit more than when you're playing, like a modern 4-3-3. And at that time, wingers, inside forwards weren't really known for goals, and it's almost like Peter Lorimer bucks the trend a little bit. So for me, he's got to be very, very high on this list. The fact that if it wasn't Alan Clark scoring the goals, Peter Lorimer was able to step up, in the big moments, and he has to be, certainly, at the very least, I think 7th in this list.
Right, folks, in 6th position now with 245 appearances and 45 goals. It's Gordon Strachan. Strachan's first game as captain saw Leeds lose 5-2 at Newcastle on the opening day of the 89-90 season. However, they wouldn't lose another league game then until November the 11th. Another exploit from the across the Pennines, but that era, Gordon Strachan epitomises that era, really, doesn't it? 6th position and well deserved to be on the list, I would say. I'll come to you first, Rocco.
Definitely, yeah. I had Strachan at number 5 actually. An amazing player, and what he did for Leeds, that sort of ranks alongside a lot of the Reevy guys. He dragged us out of the 2nd division. He was our Bobby Collins, Wilkinson's Bobby Collins, and he kept it going. Helped us to win the league, and then even the following season when we finished 17th and had a disastrous season, I thought he was still brilliant. Some of his performances were still top class, and he just had all the skill in the world. He was, so quick, just so vibrant, and he was well into his 30s by then. Fantastic player. And I think, funnily enough, I was watching the video of his Leicester goal today that effectively got us promoted. And I think they mentioned that he'd scored 17 goals that season, which is absolutely remarkable. So well worthy of the list. A full-blown legend, and title winner. What more can you say?
Exactly. Oscar, you're smiling away there. Happy to see Strachan in the list.
As Rocco said there, in that 89-90 season, he was the player who delivered in the clutch moments. Like Leicester goal, various different moments in that season, and he was the one that I think very much set the standards, for a Wilkinson team in terms of what it was expected of it. Not just great craft on the ball, his work rate off it as well. He's tenacious. And that right hand side with him and Mel Sterling just works fantastically well. He was, considering the age he was at that time as well. I think he was in his mid-30s then, in the 89-90 season, to then get us promoted, and then 4th place in the first season back, then winning the league. That is just a phenomenal. You do not see that these days. You don't see it. People. We obviously talk about Leicester in whenever it was the mid 2010s. Even that wasn't as dramatic as what, Gordon Strachan, the impact he had at Leeds United. Not just Gordon Strachan, of course, but he was the main player in that team. He was the one that really elevated it up another level. And, of course, part of that fantastic midfield 4, Strachan, Batty, McAllister, Gary Speed. You could easily have all 4 in your top 10. I think in terms of just a pure level, Gordon Strachan was there throughout, right from the start, all the way to the very peak of it. He would have to comfortably be there.
Andrea, anything more to add on Gordon Strachan, my man?
Yeah, an offer, the biggest offer Sheffield Wednesday ever made, to join their team, and he decided to drop down a division and join Leeds. And that changed everything in the 80s for Leeds United, because you went from a team going with ups and downs. One of the founding captains in those days was Hazelwood, and how it ended. With that famous spell with the cup. And you go from there to Gordon Strachan, who changed completely the mentality of the team, and he implanted the first flame of what came in the next years. With promotion and the champion season, in 1991, 1992. So he was like the Bobby Collins, like Rocco, and also Oscar said, he was like one of the leaders that transformed the whole team because he brought his experience, his mentality.
Like's been said, you know, Collins and Strachan, you just don't get that in today's game, where a player would drop out of the Premier League to drop down a division to help reignite a football club.
It's basically saying, like, last season, you know, in terms of Hazelwood, that incident, all right, it's different to say what McKennie, but everyone remembers McKennie, that last game against Tottenham, you know, the chance that, you know, Weston McKennie, it was very similar to the Hazelwood situation. Okay, McKennie didn't, you know, flick the middle finger at us, but he might as well have done at that point. You know, in terms of the toxicity at that time, it was the equivalent of a player from Man United joining Leeds this summer, getting us promoted this season, and then in 2 years' time winning the Premier League.
And it shows you how our player, you know, with tons of experience can transform a football club, because he arrived, he saw the club in some state. Of course, we were in the wilderness years, they are called now, you know, where you had ups and downs, but the team was always in the middle, you know, caught in the middle. Was not ready for promotion yet, but also had bad seasons, you know. A lot of managers changed in those years, and he transformed everything. He arrived and he said, basically, this is our things are done. This is how we used to do things. Aberdeen and Man United. I want to bring my mentality here, help the team, and that a player with a great personality can change the trajectory of a world football club.
Okay, folks, well, that brings us to the end of episode 1, from 10 to 6. I've really enjoyed doing it, and I know the lads have done too as well. Please make sure you smash a like on the video. Of course, get your comments in. We're really interested to see your thoughts on 10 to 6, where people got it wrong. What would have been yours? Are you surprised at those that have missed out so far? I'll just run through that list again. So in 10 was John Charles. In 9, Jack Charlton. 8th was Tony Yeboah. 7th was Peter Lorimer. And in 6th was Gordon Strachan. Let us know who you think the top 5 is going to be below. But yes, we will leave it there. Thanks as always for watching. Look out for episode 2, which will be coming over the next few days. I'll tell you what, give us 1,000 likes on this video and I'll release it as soon as that's hit.